Imagine waking up one morning, opening the newspaper, and discovering that the Eiffel Tower is for sale. Not as a joke, not as a publicity stunt, an official government sale. The documents look authentic. The meeting takes place in one of Paris's finest hotels. Government officials are present. Every detail feels legitimate. You arrive believing you're about to compete for one of the biggest scrap metal contracts in history. A few days later, you hand over a fortune. Then the seller disappears. The Eiffel Tower never belonged to him. Yet somehow, he sold it. Not once, twice. This isn't just one of history's greatest scams. It's a masterclass in how money follows trust and how trust can be manufactured. Because nearly a century later, the same psychological tricks continue to fuel investment frauds, fake business deals, and billion-dollar financial scams around the world. To understand how this happened, we need to travel back to Paris in 1925. France was still recovering from the First World War. Cities were rebuilding. Governments were under financial pressure. Newspapers regularly discussed the enormous cost of maintaining public infrastructure. The Eiffel Tower was one of those expensive landmarks. Built for the 1889 World's Fair, it was never intended to stand forever. Many Parisians had disliked it from the beginning, calling it an ugly iron monster that ruined the city's skyline. Maintaining more than 7,000 tons of iron wasn't cheap. Rust never sleeps. Every year, the tower required inspections, repairs, and fresh paint. Those costs became frequent topics in newspapers. Most people simply read those articles and moved on. One man saw something different. Opportunity. His name was Victor Lustig. He wasn't a banker, he wasn't an engineer, he wasn't even particularly wealthy. He was a professional confidence artist. Unlike ordinary thieves, Lustig understood something far more valuable than locks or safes. People don't buy facts. They buy stories. And if the story feels believable enough, reality becomes surprisingly flexible. Lustig spent years traveling across Europe, studying human behavior. He learned how successful people made decisions. He learned how wealthy businessmen wanted to believe they were smarter than everyone else. Most importantly, he realized that greed rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as ambition. In 1925, he developed what might be the most audacious business proposal in modern history. He carefully read newspaper reports discussing the maintenance costs of the Eiffel Tower. Then he imagined a simple question. What if people believed the government wanted to quietly sell it? At first, the idea sounds ridiculous. But great scams don't begin with impossible lies. They begin with believable circumstances. The French government genuinely faced financial pressure. Officials often held private negotiations before public announcements. Large contracts were commonly awarded behind closed doors. Lustig didn't need people to believe something impossible. He only needed them to connect believable facts into the wrong conclusion. So he prepared. He forged official government documents. He printed convincing stationery. He rented an elegant suite inside one of Paris's most prestigious hotels. Everything about the setting communicated authority. Then he invited several leading scrap metal dealers to a confidential meeting. Notice what he didn't do. He didn't approach ordinary people. He targeted professionals, people who understood the scrap metal business, people capable of paying millions in today's money, people who believed they belonged in exclusive rooms. When the businessmen arrived, Lustig introduced himself as a senior government official. His explanation sounded surprisingly reasonable. The Eiffel Tower had become too expensive to maintain. Political opposition made a public sale difficult. Therefore, the government had decided to handle the transaction discreetly. Only a handful of trusted companies had been invited. Secrecy, he explained, was essential. Every detail strengthened the illusion. The luxury hotel suggested status. The official paperwork suggested legitimacy. The private invitation suggested exclusivity. Most importantly, each businessman assumed the others had already verified the opportunity. That assumption became its own evidence. This is one of the oldest financial illusions in history. When enough serious people appear interested, we stop asking whether the opportunity is real. Instead, we begin worrying about missing it. Psychologists call this social proof. Investors simply call it market confidence. Lustig then took the businessmen on a private tour of the Eiffel Tower. Imagine standing beneath nearly 10,000 tons of iron, while someone calmly explains how much money could be earned by dismantling it. Suddenly, the impossible starts feeling practical. You're no longer asking whether the government owns the tower. Of course it does. You're calculating transportation costs, labor expenses, steel prices, potential profit. Your brain has quietly moved from skepticism to optimization. That's exactly where Lustig wanted his victims. Among the invited businessmen was André Poisson. Poisson desperately wanted to establish himself among Paris's elite industrialists. Winning this contract would transform his reputation overnight. Lustig noticed that ambition. Great con artists don't force people into bad decisions. They simply discover which dream already exists. Then they build a bridge toward it. Soon another conversation began, away from everyone else. Lustig confessed that government officials weren't paid particularly well. Perhaps, he suggested, a personal payment might help ensure the contract found the right buyer. Today we'd recognize this as a bribe. Ironically, the request made the entire operation seem more authentic. Corruption felt believable. Honesty would have seemed suspicious. Poisson paid both the supposed purchase price and the private payment. Lustig accepted the money. Then he quietly left France. By the time Poisson realized he'd been deceived, the con artist had vanished. But something unexpected happened. Poisson never reported the crime. Why? Because embarrassment can be stronger than justice. Imagine explaining to friends, business partners, newspapers, and police that you believed someone had sold you the Eiffel Tower. The financial loss was painful. The public humiliation felt unbearable. That silence became part of Lustig's profit. Modern fraud investigators see this repeatedly. Many victims wait weeks or months before reporting scams. Some never report them at all. Not because they don't know they've been cheated, because admitting the mistake feels worse than accepting the loss. Lustig understood human psychology better than most economists understood markets. When he realized newspapers remained silent, he made an astonishing decision. He returned to Paris and attempted to sell the Eiffel Tower again. The second attempt followed the same blueprint: official documents, private meetings, exclusive invitations, confident presentation. This time, however, one potential buyer became suspicious and contacted authorities. Before police could arrest him, Lustig escaped once again. The second sale failed. But the fact that it almost succeeded tells us something remarkable. The scam wasn't built on extraordinary luck. It was built on predictable human behavior. Nearly every successful financial fraud follows the same pattern. Create authority. Create urgency. Create exclusivity. Encourage secrecy. Reward quick decisions. Discourage independent verification. Whether the asset is a famous monument, a fake cryptocurrency, a miracle investment fund, or an imaginary company, the mechanics rarely change. Only the packaging evolves. Think about modern investment fraud. Victims are told they're joining an exclusive opportunity. Returns won't last forever. Information must remain confidential. Verification takes too long. Others are already investing. Every sentence pushes emotion ahead of evidence. The Eiffel Tower scam wasn't really about steel. It was about trust. Trust has always been one of the world's most valuable financial assets. Banks depend on it. Markets depend on it. Currencies depend on it. Businesses depend on it. Without trust, contracts become meaningless. Money itself becomes less valuable. The irony is that the same force allowing economies to function also creates opportunities for extraordinary deception. The more efficiently society trusts, the more carefully that trust must be protected. Victor Lustig would later become involved in other famous schemes, including counterfeiting operations that challenged law enforcement across multiple countries. His career eventually ended with arrest and imprisonment. But his greatest legacy wasn't the money he stole. It was the lesson he unknowingly left behind. Every financial decision contains two separate investments. One investment is the money. The other is belief. Most people spend enormous effort protecting the first. Far fewer examine the second. History remembers the Eiffel Tower because it seems impossible that anyone could sell it. Perhaps the more surprising fact is that intelligent, experienced businessmen believed they were buying it. That should make every investor pause, because financial scams rarely succeed by making people less intelligent. They succeed by making intelligent people feel unusually certain, and certainty can be incredibly expensive. Nearly 100 years have passed since Victor Lustig walked through Paris pretending to represent the French government. The documents have changed, the technology has changed, the victims have changed. Human psychology hasn't. The next great financial deception probably won't involve the Eiffel Tower. It won't arrive in an elegant Paris hotel. It may arrive in your inbox, on your phone, or through someone who seems completely trustworthy. The question isn't whether another Victor Lustig will appear. History suggests someone always does. The real question is this: when the next impossible opportunity is wrapped in just enough credibility to feel real, will we recognize the scam, or will we simply call it a once-in-a-lifetime investment?